Hello and welcome to India's World. In his Independence Day speech, Prime Minister Narendra Modi accused Pakistan of sponsoring terrorism in India and committing rights abuses in its Balochistan province. This was after Pakistani Prime Minister Nawaz Sharif had held India responsible for the ongoing violence in Kashmir in his Independence Day speech on August 14th. 2 years ago, Modi and Sharif had started off on a positive note. They met on several occasions and signaled the importance of trade and cordial bilateral relations between the two countries. However, violence in Kashmir over the last 1 month, Pakistan's anti-India tirade, and the Indian counter-accusations have made the dream of rapprochement between the two countries more distant than ever before. To discuss the shifting of gears in India-Pakistan relations, we have with us a distinguished panel of experts. We have with us Ambassador Kanwal Sibal, an outspoken and brilliant foreign secretary. He's been India's ambassador to Turkey, France and Russia. Dr. C. Rajamohan, one of India's foremost commentators on international relations. He's director of Carnegie India, a think tank in New Delhi. He's also the consulting editor on foreign affairs of the Indian Express newspaper. And we have with us Mr. Tilak Devasher. He was special secretary in the cabinet secretariat. He's interested in developments in India's neighborhood, especially in Pakistan and Afghanistan, and has been writing about them in various media outlets. I welcome all of you to this discussion. Ambassador Sibal, let me begin with you. What do you think provoked Prime Minister Modi to mention Balochistan in his Independence Day address? Do you think there is a new aggressiveness in India's policy towards Pakistan now?
You know, all these years we held back on Balochistan, barring in 2005, 2006. We made some mention and there was a strong reaction from Pakistan because we didn't want to enlarge the areas of our differences with Pakistan, and we have no interest in destabilizing Balochistan or supporting Balochistan's independence. But Pakistan has been going to town all these years on Kashmir, on human rights violations, Kashmir internationalizing it, trying all sorts of methodologies to destabilize Kashmir, terrorism, this and that, even war. But lately, I think they have gone beyond what was necessary and without taking into consideration the repercussions on relations. After all, Modi did reach out to Nawaz Sharif and gave him the benefit of the doubt, tried to strengthen his position as civilian prime minister against the armed forces, made gestures which caused confusion in India as to what was Modi's game plan. So he risked political capital on this. And Nawaz Sharif just went to town over Kashmir.
So it's tit for tat now?
It's not tit for tat. It is that at the end of the day, if you are going to go beyond all boundaries and all limits, then I need to remind you that you have a huge problem inside your country and very sensitive issues are involved, and we can mention them too. It's a warning signal, but I don't think that we would need to or intend to go further if Pakistan backs off.
We're going to discuss that in a bit. Raj, do you think the Balochistan reference was a diversionary tactic, as some people have alleged, aimed at diverting attention from the upheaval that's taking place in Kashmir, and to suggest that what is happening in Kashmir is entirely Pakistan's doing?
Look, I think we've gone through various phases in Kashmir. I mean, I think it's also a fact whenever there is trouble in Kashmir, the India-Pakistan relations go further down. And in both the countries, I mean, I think there is a natural tendency to posture to your own audiences. I mean, but this time, I think what seems to have snapped, as Ambassador Sibal was saying, the Pakistanis have seemed to have gone an extra distance, which seems to have put an end to the PM's initiatives towards Pakistan. But yet, I think what he said was quite measured. He only said two things. In the all-party meeting, what we were told was that, look, I'm asking my foreign office to expose the human rights atrocities, abuses by the Pakistani state in Balochistan, POK, Gilgit-Baltistan. From the Red Fort, all he said was, I want to share with you, a lot of people are writing to me how grateful they are for that we have raised the issue. So this is not a threat in that sense of actually escalating or supporting the insurgency, the militancy, whatever goes on. But the fact is, if it is a diversionary move, it's all right. But the fact is, Pakistanis have been accusing you for more than a decade that you're out for mischief in Balochistan in any case. So I think it's interesting that actually Pakistan wanted to put Balochistan on the table until recently. They were trying to equate Kashmir and Balochistan. And now it has happened in a different way. My sense is this is just the beginning of a complex game we're going to see.
Right. Tilak, do you think by choosing to highlight human rights violations in Balochistan and the independence movement in Balochistan indirectly, Modi was trying to reverse Islamabad's narrative on Kashmir? saying that if you say X, Y, and Z about Kashmir, then the same thing applies to Balochistan.
I think so. I think so in the sense that, just to add to what Ambassador Sibal said, see, the template of Indo-Pak relations so far has been pain as usual. Pakistan inflicts the pain through terrorism, through propaganda. We keep absorbing the pain and with a supposedly high moral ground. For the first time, I think India has laid 3 cards on the table. The Prime Minister has on POK, Gilgit-Baltistan and Balochistan. This is not irretrievable. It's just it's a non-specific reference. How does Pakistan react to this? Does it say that India is bluffing like we did, or what they thought we did earlier?
But they're saying India's crossed the red line.
But we haven't. There is no red line. We've just put 3 cards on the table, and how does Pakistan react to those? Do they calculate the costs and then withdraw, as Ambassador Sibal said? Or do they say, no, India is bluffing, we will continue doing as it were? And then how do we react to it? So certainly, I think, and the equivalence, the sort of linking Balochistan and Kashmir is done by Pakistan. Way back in 2005 when the Foreign Office...
But they did it in terms of saying that you accuse us of terrorism in Kashmir, you are indulging in terrorism in Balochistan. Now it's on different terms.
No, but that statement of the Pak Foreign Office spokesman in 2005 was a specific reference to what our MEA spokesperson said on Balochistan. And then he linked Kashmir and the Northeast to that. Now, our interference, maybe we'll discuss the allegation of our interference slightly later.
Okay. Sibal, Pakistan, of course, we've been discussing, has long accused India of fueling terrorism in Balochistan and of supporting the Baloch independence movement through, diplomatically by giving them money and so on and so forth. Is Pakistan justified, or would it be justified in now saying that, well, now Modi has said this from the ramparts of the Red Fort, and this proves what we've always been saying is India's admission of help to...
things. One is that Pakistan has been saying this, and Pakistan has been challenged by us publicly, repeatedly, that if you have proof, present it.
They presented this man called Jadhav.
No, hold on. And Sartaj Aziz, I'll answer that. Sartaj Aziz has been going to town saying they have proof, they'll present it. They did present it to the US government, to the UN Secretary General, and the US State Department let it be known that there was nothing in it. It was hollow. There was no proof of any kind. So they don't have proof. When I had been raising these issues with them in office and otherwise, they say that, oh, you gave a passport to Brahmdat Bukti. That is the only thing that they say. Then when it comes to what you said about Kulbhushan Yadav and this and that, first of all, we have denied it. We have sought consular access. We have also cast doubts on the manner in which he may have been abducted. We have not disowned him. But I've been telling the Pakistanis and even the Americans that there's a difference between support to terrorism and intelligence work. The US does a lot of intelligence work in India. All countries do. Pakistan does. But we don't equate that with terrorism. If they have proof that we are supporting terrorism, that's a different matter. But spying, every country is spying on each other. Even the Americans are spying on the Europeans, their allies, all the time. So I don't take that allegation seriously. But one very quick thing. But interference in internal affairs. Pakistan has been interfering in internal affairs of India for decades. Gujarat had nothing to do with Kashmir. Right? Babri Masjid had nothing to do with Kashmir. They have crossed red lines in Kargil, in supporting terrorism in Jammu and Kashmir, in supporting terrorism in the rest of India. They've crossed red lines repeatedly. Now for them to say, oh, you're crossing a red line, it's absurd.
Okay, all right. We need to take a break at this point. We'll be back again with this interesting discussion in a bit. Stay with us. Don't go away. Welcome back. We're discussing India's Balochistan gambit and its consequences for India-Pakistan relations. Tilak, has the Prime Minister now virtually announced moral and diplomatic support for the Baloch struggle? And do you see this transforming it into a material help for the Baloch independence movement?
Bharat, before I answer that, it's important to understand when Pakistan started accusing us of interfering in Balochistan. The 5th Baloch insurgency began in January 2005 when Dr. Shazia Khalid was raped in a hospital inside the Sui gas plant by army officers. The Baloch started their uprising then. No accusation was made against India. Akbar Bukti got into the act and started acting aggressively. It was only after he was killed in August 2006 that Pakistan started making allegations against us because the insurgency got out of hand. They were not able to handle it and they tried to externalize the whole problem and lay the blame on India. Yeah. So this has been not because of anything that India has done or, but basically because they're not able to handle it. The socio-economic conditions in Balochistan are so bad that the Baloch have really no other option but to rise in revolt, which is what they have done. As far as acquisitions on India are concerned, as you mentioned, we're being accused anyway.
No, I'm not asking about accusation. I'm saying that clearly some kind of moral support has been given to the Baloch people by the Prime Minister's statement. I'm saying, how do you see the whole thing unfolding? Would it result in material support being given at some point to the Baloch insurgents?
I don't think so. I think, from what I can make out, it will be a verbal support. That means you keep, and which we must do that, and expose the human rights violations of the Baloch. It's a verbal. And at best, if you really want to go ahead, moral, political and diplomatic support, which is what Pakistan keeps claiming, you have think tanks in Delhi. You have, the IDSA, you have the USI, you have the ICWA. Why not call the Baloch and ask them to explain to the people of India what exactly is happening in Balochistan? There is absolutely no harm in doing that.
Okay. Do you see more and more of that happening? One. And two, what does the Prime Minister asking in the all-party meeting, telling the all-party meeting that we've asked all our diplomatic missions abroad to collect information on rights violations and the condition of people in POK and in Balochistan. What does it mean and what does it do to India's engagement with Pakistan? Does it merely change the rules of the game, or does it say, look, it's a paradigm shift now, we move on to something else?
I think at the first level, what you asked, I think this is about, at this point, the government of India is promising political, diplomatic and moral support. That's all at this point. I think exposing what they're doing, bringing it to the international forums, etc. But as the paradigm shifted, I think we are on the way to a paradigm shift, I believe, because of two reasons. I think one, way Pakistan unwilling to change anything, whether what it does in Afghanistan, what it does in India, that the continuous use of terror as an instrument of policy is beginning to snap things in Delhi. The Delhi saying that, look, I've tried negotiating over the last 25 years, including a settlement on Kashmir. Now, this is not getting me anywhere. And when now what we saw in the last 3 months, things are getting worse. So I must try something different. I think we're at the beginning of that phase. Second, I think is a deeper structural thing, that the fact that for the last 30 years, ever since the Soviet intervention in Afghanistan, Soviet occupation for 10 years, then Pakis support the whole extremist forces, Americans come in now after to oust the Taliban. 35 years of this turmoil, I think is going to have long-term consequences in our western frontiers. And I think we're at the beginning of that, a new crisis, and I think we'll have to deal with it because this will draw in the Iranians, this is drawing in the Chinese.
Yeah, we're going to discuss that in a bit. Sibal, one criticism of Prime Minister Modi's statement on Balochistan has been that any reference to Balochistan by India gives an opportunity to Pakistan to internationalize Kashmir. Now, hasn't Pakistan been trying to internationalize Kashmir all this while, irrespective of whether India said anything about Balochistan or not?
I've seen those statements, and especially articles written by someone I won't name, who's held positions, official positions in the past. I don't understand that line of argument. Pakistan has been internationalizing the Kashmir issue for the last 60, 70 years. So what's new in that? And now, in fact, they'll find it far more difficult to internationalize it than in the past, because the equations between India and the countries that were backing Pakistan's internationalization to some extent, the relationship has changed, and they are no more interested in making this a point of friction between India, let's say the United States or Europe. So Pakistan on very weak ground. Number two, Pakistan has lost its international reputation terribly. Yeah. It is recognized as the source of international terrorism, and radicalization and extremism in Pakistan now is a known fact, and everybody is concerned. This policy in Afghanistan have riled the Americans, and we've seen indications of America's disenchantment with Pakistan. So they can't internationalize it further. So I don't see any danger of that kind at all. Okay. And finally,
Tilak, Balochistan, after all, holds Pakistan's vast quantities of Pakistan's natural resources, provides access to the Arabian Sea through Gwadar port. Do you think any further disturbance in Balochistan can destabilize Pakistan in the long run? Suppose India were to use its leverage with Balochi leaders, if it has any, and destabilize Balochistan further, wouldn't it destabilize Pakistan as a whole? Sui gas, Gwadar port, all the natural resources.
Not only that, 44% of Pakistan's area is Balochistan. Of course, the north is Pashtun and the south is Baloch. Yes, it would. But you see, if Pakistan was smart, they would have stopped the exploitation of the Baloch and given them something, to make it worth their while to be in Pakistan. You take the case of literacy. National average literacy is 60%. It's 63% in Punjab, it's 44% in Balochistan. Look at the deprivation. As I mentioned earlier, 44% of the population in Pakistan is multidimensionally poor. It's 71% poor in Balochistan. So when the Baloch says you're building Gwadar, you're building these highways, what am I getting out of it? Nothing. On the other hand, your Sui gas is almost run dry because of supplying to Pakistan. Sui itself doesn't have piped gas. It came to Quetta only to the army cantonment. So for the Baloch, the circle has been so narrowed by Pakistan that if today they want to break out of Pakistan, and it's the Pakistani mentality that if they want to keep Balochistan with them, then you better develop their province, which they haven't done systematically.
And you stop killing their people. I mean, one of the biggest issues there has been these enforced disappearances.
Yeah.
And there's nobody accountable.
Yeah.
When the courts call army officers before them, the army people don't turn up.
Yeah.
So there is a genuine Baloch disenchantment with Pakistani state, isn't there?
No, it is gone on. I think the recent phase of insurgency, there have been repeated phases like right in the beginning of independence. The Khan of Kala wanted a different type of relationship. Whatever the arrangements they made with the British Raj, they were not willing to extend the same with Pakistan. So I think there was, from the beginning, the question of how do you integrate this frontier region into Pakistani state. And I think we've had our difficulties, but Pakistan has been far more, Pakistani state has been far more meaner, I would say, to the frontier people, whether it is in whether it is in Northwest Frontier, whether it is in Balochistan. So the trouble has been brewing. And I think it has made it worse. And then you have as I said now, the Taliban is sitting in Quetta. They do all kinds of things in Afghanistan. There is a turmoil on the Iran-Pakistan border because there is trouble on the Baloch on both sides. Even 2 weeks ago, there was firing across the border. We were talking about spying. Some reports said Israelis were sitting because those who are hostile to Iran, some of them are operating. There are Jundullah, the various groups. So in a sense, Pakistan, by playing this game of allowing its territory to be used for, creating mischief in other parts, there's a payback. I think some of it is coming back.
Okay, all right. We need to take a break again at this point. We'll be back again in a bit. Stay with us. Don't go away. Welcome back. We're discussing India's Balochistan gambit and its consequences for India-Pakistan relations. Sibal, to what extent do you think the Balochistan reference by Prime Minister Modi took into account Chinese interests in the region? Was it a signal to China also?
Indirectly, yes. But there's one point on which I think, unless I am wrong, I think the Prime Minister asked our missions abroad to look at the complaints and human rights violations in POK and Gilgit-Baltistan, not Balochistan.
Okay.
Because that is our territory. We don't claim Balochistan as our territory. Insofar as the Chinese are concerned, as it is, there are problems in Balochistan. There's the issue of security, the security of Gwadar and the lines of communication. And if India says something about Balochistan is seen to be giving political, moral, diplomatic support, the Chinese will have to factor that into their plans and see if this increases their security problems. There can be now two consequences of this. One is that they can caution Pakistan to do the sort of things which he's saying, give more space to the Balochis, tackle them properly, make them part of the national narrative, give them more development, etc., etc. Or in fact, ask for more security and this and that and that. Yes, there is, but it's indirect at this stage because it's a developing situation.
Okay. Raj, the Gwadar port has been developed by the Chinese. That's in Balochistan. The China-Pakistan economic corridor from Xinjiang moves to Gwadar through POK and Balochistan. How do you think China will really react to India's apparent support? I'm not saying real support, apparent support to the Baloch insurgency, because it can change. Once you go down this path, you don't know where it might lead because it depends on other people's reactions. So could it threaten the $46 billion investment that the Chinese have promised in the CEPC and around it?
Yeah. No, I think first we must remember that, there was in the old days, people used to talk about the Russians coming down to the warm waters of the Arabian Sea, that the Russians would cut through. I mean, in fact, the whole argument in the wake of the Russian intervention,
Heritan,
that they would seeking access to the sea. I mean, I think the Chinese are fairly open today. That's exactly what they're looking for. That they're looking for access to the western provinces, both through Pakistan, through Myanmar, that they need access to the sea. So therefore, it's easier for them to. So I think their project is strategic. I mean, there's no question. For India, there's already a problem. I think we've not made a secret of that. We were told that issue was raised with the different levels, including with the Foreign Minister Wang Yi. They look that it is coming through the Pakistan-occupied Kashmir. Therefore, there are issues for us in terms of what. And these protests go back to 1970s, actually, when the Karakoram Highway was being built as a purely strategic project. Today, it's got even a bigger economic and other implications. But the corridor, don't see it as just one point. I mean, they're doing a lot of things in Karachi. They're developing the Makran coast. So it is not as if something happens in Balochistan, they can't get access to the sea. So I won't go down that road. But the important thing for us is, look, if Chinese military presence in POK, if there is a military base that's going to come in Gwadar, India would necessarily react to that.
But Makran coast is also in Balochistan, no? Unless they are limiting themselves only to Karachi. Then you can say, okay, they can get access to Karachi. But wait, where is the economic corridor to Karachi? There isn't one.
No, down the road, actually, if you see the corridor, is not just one line today. It kind of like a river delta, it breaks up. So there are multiple paths, but essentially developing the coastline.
Okay.
So the important thing is this for us. Look, what used to be a problem in the north today, the prospect of China getting a naval base on Pakistani coast, that is changing India's calculations on how it needs to deal with the Chinese power projection in Pakistan.
Okay. Tilak, do you think, Ambassador Sibal gave two options of what China might do. Is there a third option, that China would change its position on Kashmir and how it views Kashmir? For example, there are reports that the Chinese state media has already started, gone as far as to begin referring to Pakistan-occupied Kashmir. They use the term Pakistan-occupied Kashmir now. Earlier, they used to use the term Pakistan-administered Kashmir. So is that a significant change or considered change in terminology, or you don't make much of it?
I haven't seen this particular. You want to say something?
I just want to come in on that. And I think the media was overplaying that. Look, Chinese position on Kashmir has changed in favor of Pakistan. Forget the Global Times report. There was a time until recently where they said, look, there is a dispute between India and Pakistan, and that their own annexation of the parts of Kashmir would not be final until there is an overall settlement in Kashmir. From that today, they've begun to treat the Indian citizens of Kashmir differently from Pakistanis.
Yeah.
So there is, for example, there was a problem we had of not giving visas to Indians. And second, even more important, Chinese go and do projects in Pakistan-occupied Kashmir. The ambassador won't even visit the Indian-held Kashmir. They're saying clearly, look, they've accepted Pakistani control of Kashmir as a legitimate thing, and that they're not willing to acknowledge even a diplomatic acceptance, that we can come and do even development. Because they say, we're doing development work, it might be disputed, but why is he not willing to even show up in our side?
Okay. So do you want to comment on that also?
No, not particularly. I don't think the Chinese will take the risk because they know it's a very sensitive issue and we can retaliate. But the fact that we are now very assertive about POK and our claims on Gilgit-Baltistan is a signal to China that this issue is going to become more and more germane in our relations. So the more they enhance their presence there, the stronger would be the protests on our side. So it's going to become difficult for China. But if on Kashmir, they become very provocative, they have to worry about Tibet, don't they?
So Chinese would definitely have taken notice of what the PM said. But I think on CPEC itself, China is having problems with Pakistan. It doesn't get reported so much in the Indian media, but there is a lot of frustration among the Chinese that the early harvest projects, which are supposed to be completed by 2018-19, are either going to be cancelled or going to be further delayed because of problems in the Pakistani side. So given what the PM has said, given the frustration the Chinese have, I'm sure the Chinese must be thinking, and thinking not necessarily positively. They could be even thinking...
But they're not going to change their position on Kashmir. In fact, it's changed for the worse, as Raj says.
They will watch. They will certainly watch, what we do, and how does Pakistan react to that.
All right. Raj, how do you think Iran will react to Indian support for the Baloch independence movement? Because they also have a huge Baloch population. Their province, which borders Balochistan, is called Sistan Balochistan, and it's a disturbed province, and they have an insurgency there. So how are they going to view this?
I think the Iranians have had concerns that Pakistan was hosting Sunni extremist organizations as a way of interfering, destabilizing Iran. So Iran and Pakistan have a very complicated relationship, and it constantly manifests itself on the Baloch border. One is Pakistan interfering. There have been cases where Iranians have retaliated very strongly, pursued the groups into Pakistani territory, and then you had this whole controversy over the pipeline.
But how are they reacting to India?
Right now, look, I think, if you remember, when Hassan Rouhani went to Pakistan a few months ago, the Pakistan Army Chief Rahil Sharif meets him, accuses him of collaborating with India in destabilizing Pakistani Balochistan.
And he got very upset.
And the ISPR put out a press release saying they're doing it. So there's clearly, at least the Pakistanis believe we are working together with the Iranians.
How would Iran react?
No, if they wanted to react, they would have reacted already, because Pakistan has been accusing us of interference in Balochistan and supporting the Balochistan insurgency since many years now. But Pakistan has never, Iran has never raised this with us. I've been to Iran a few times recently. They've never raised this with us. It's not an issue. The other thing, of course, is we are raising only the human rights angle. And that actually traps Pakistan, because when they go complaining to the rest of the world that India is interfering in Balochistan, then somebody can say they're only asking you to look at the human rights situation. There is no evidence of their interference beyond that. So they'll have to justify their own problem of dealing with the Baluchis in terms of human rights.
Yeah, we've run out of time, but quick one sentence.
I think, if you remember, one of the other things PM mentioned in his speech, one of the few foreign policy things was about the Chabahar project, that India, Afghanistan and Iran are working together. And Chabahar, if we talk about Gwadar, I mean, that Indian interest in, that the trilateral convergence of interests, India, Afghanistan and Pakistan, is growing, and that itself would have some significant consequences.
Tilak, isn't Chabahar in the Sistan Balochistan province of Iran?
Yes. And that's exactly the point, that why Iran will not react right now, because A, it's only humanitarian. We've not said we are supporting Baloch independence, and the Chabahar port is a very useful thing for Iran itself. So I don't think
Iran is trying to play mischief, as I saw from Sartaj Aziz. They're trying to use the Revolutionary Guards to press the Iranian government not to go forward with India on Chabahar.
All right, but we've really run out of time. We could have gone on for longer, but I thank all of you, Tilak, Devasher, C. Rajamohan, Ambassador Kanwal, Sibal, for participating in this discussion. That's all we have for you today. We'll be back again next week as usual. Until then, goodbye, and thanks for watching India's World.